Hello, folks. Welcome to Cooking with Mr. Pogg. Oh man, I don't know how many episodes of this we're going to do, but today what we're going to do is we're going to try and throw together something called shawarma spice. So you might know shawarma from the end of the first Avengers movie, where Tony Stark is like, hey, I hear there's a great shawarma place nearby. I've never tried it. You want to try some shawarma? So shawarma's delicious. It's a traditional blend of, I think it's like Moroccan or some sort of Middle Eastern spices. But you can put it on pretty much anything. We really like it on chicken thighs. You can put it on chicken breasts. You can put it on beef. So what we're going to do is we're just going to throw some spices together and see what happens, right? So if you've never tried to make your own spice mix before, right? Say you're somebody that just goes to the grocery store and it's like, oh, Tennessee steak. That sounds good. And you just throw that on whatever you're doing. Nothing wrong with that. But sometimes it's fun to just try and throw something together yourself and see how good it comes out. So what I've already done is I've got my bowl here, and I've got some salt and pepper that I've already ground in there because I figured that you guys didn't want to hear a whole bunch of that the whole time. And then I've got my whole other myriad of spices, which hopefully if I can figure out iMovie should show up right now. So from left to right, we've got some salt, some pepper, some paprika, some ground ginger, curry powder, ground turmeric, cayenne pepper, some ground cinnamon, some ground cloves, coriander, ground nutmeg, whole allspice, which I would really recommend grinding up, and then some cumin. Right? When you're making your own spice mix for something, it's never a bad idea to go and take a look at a couple recipes and get some ideas for what you want to put in it. So all the stuff I have in front of me right now is stuff that I've taken from, 3-ish different websites and different recipes for how to throw together a spice mix for this. There's never necessarily a right or a wrong way to do this. What I would really encourage is, get familiar with some of the spices you have, right? So here I've got some cumin. One of the best things you can do is just smell the spice. See what it smells like, right? It's also not a bad idea, if you're really careful, get a little bit on your finger and just get a taste for what that tastes like. Right? So cumin is it's kind of got a bit of smokiness, right? Cumin's pretty good on a lot of stuff. You get it quite a bit in some sorts of chilies and stuff like that. Chilies as in the ones with the beans, not chilies like the hot peppers. But yeah, so we're just going to throw some stuff together. I'm going to kind of run with it and let's see what happens. So I'm going to first put in some paprika. And I'm going to go pretty heavy on the paprika because, one, it gives it a nice color. And two, it smells so good. What else do we got here? Turmeric. It's traditionally an Indian spice. Right? It smells a little bit kind of like peanut butter, actually. It's kind of strange. It's a very yellow spice. It comes from, I believe there is actually a turmeric plant. But it's like a citrusy peanut butter, which is kind of interesting. You don't really need a whole lot of turmeric, right? But it does add this really sweet color. Let's see if I can get some of that on there. All right, so that paprika is that nice dark red, and the turmeric is that very vibrant yellow color, right? It's really cool. All right, but you really don't need a whole ton. So I'm not going to put in nearly as much as the paprika. I'm going to throw in some cayenne because I like a little bit of heat. And by a little bit, I might put in a little bit more than a little bit because I really like the heat. If it doesn't make you cry a little bit, what's the point? So I've got some allspice here. So allspice is this tiny little seed. And me, being a moron, when I went to Hannaford, I picked up these whole allspice. So they're actually just tiny little seeds, right? They were kind of rattling around in there. So what I did was I ground them up a little bit into a consistency that's sort of like that. Hopefully I don't spill this all over my keyboard. That would be embarrassing. Right. And allspice is kind of reminds me of making a nice pumpkin pie sort of spice in the fall. Right. So, we're not going to go too heavy on that because I don't really want this to be too sweet, right? But whenever you're able to, trying to cut some savory flavors with some sweet flavors is never a bad idea. Got some coriander here, also traditionally an Indian spice. It's this one's hard to describe. Maybe I should just have a new show where I just try to describe spices. That would be fun. Whatever it is, it's good. Coriander is, again, traditionally another Indian spice. It's delicious. And then something that people don't really think about putting on like any sort of meat that I really recommend trying, not putting a whole lot on, but with the right blend of spices, putting a little bit of cinnamon, right? Recently I made some Moroccan style stuffed peppers, right, where you take some ground beef and you spice it up and all that. Cinnamon is actually pretty good on ground beef if you mix it with the right stuff. Let's put a little dash of cinnamon in there. Right. And it's okay if you put stuff together and you don't end up liking it, right? Like I have no clue if I'm going to like this after I throw all this stuff in. I'm also going to throw in a little bit of nutmeg, again, something that you normally see with some sort of like pumpkin pie spice. In fact, that's pretty much what it smells like. It's kind of reminding you of like a cold winter's day and you just have a nice hot cup of apple cider. Right? But nutmeg gets pretty strong pretty fast. Right? I was going to throw in a little bit of ground ginger. If you're somebody that really likes to be fancy, you can throw in your own fresh ginger, but you're going to want it pretty fine for something like this for a spice rub. Right? So now, got this whole bowl. It's just a big mishmash of colors and flavors. And we're going to give it a little good shake, make sure that everything's pretty nicely incorporated. Right? I'm going to be honest. If you're cooking at home, you're cooking for yourself, nobody's going to tell if you just decide to like mix it up a little bit with your hands. Right? If you're cooking for other people, don't do that. But cooking for myself and my girlfriend, she's not going to know unless she watches this. All right? Cool. So what I've got here is I've now got this nice mixture where everything's kind of all blended together a little better. Right? And the most important thing you can do when you're cooking is taste what you're cooking, right? You don't know if it's going to be any good if you don't know what it tastes like, right? That's ridiculous. It's not like you're going to go through all this work and not eat it, right? So when you're tasting a spice mix, you could do the proper thing and, grab a spoon and just have a little bit. I'm going to go a little bit off, Buck. I'm just going to take like a little pinch in my fingers. Whew. 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 All right, and this is exactly why we taste test things. So what I'm getting is that it's a little bit too salty. It's definitely got a very forward like kick in the face with the spice. So then the hard part is trying to figure out what can you do to sort of like reduce that down a little bit. So what I'm thinking is it's a little bit too spicy. I'm going to add a little bit more sweet. I'm going to add a little bit more of the cinnamon here. I think that'll balance things out a little better. What else do we got? I'm definitely not putting any more chili powder in there. I might throw a little bit more of this allspice in that I already ground up. Oh man, I almost forgot. I've also got ground cloves. So whenever you think of like pumpkin spice, like in the fall, this is usually what people are thinking of. This is like the pumpkin spice. Sometimes you put it like on apple pies. You do not put a lot in. Don't put too much because that's a very strong one. I think I'm also going to go a little bit more paprika just to give it a little bit more body. Mellow out some of those other flavors. Let's give this a little mix up and see what we got. And the other thing that you might notice when you're making a spice mix for the first time, especially, again, like if you're a moron like me and you buy these like ones that are whole and you have to grind them up yourself. If you have a spice grinder, that's awesome. There's this thing called a mortar and pestle. It's basically just like a stone bowl and like a little thing that you kind of like crush things in it with. I don't have one of those, so I ended up using 2 measuring cups. Right. So you might find that things are a little bit grainy. I wouldn't worry too much about it. You're making it yourself. Nothing's going to be ever perfect, right? As long as it tastes good to you, that's what matters. All right, so I added those extra little bits. Let's take another taste. Not bad. Might go a little bit off book. Might add a little bit of curry powder in there. Again, you might notice that before I'm adding any of these things, unless I've already kind of like got a good idea of what they are, I'm smelling what that spice smells like. And as I'm smelling this curry powder, it's kind of got that sort of peanutty smell that the ground turmeric also has. And I think I'd be in for a little bit of that. The curry powder is usually a little bit mellower than the turmeric is. Let's try a little bit of that. Mix that on in. And when I'm mixing it, I'm not really doing anything fancy. I'm just kind of taking this bowl and whipping it around, making sure to get everything nice and agitated. right? You don't want to get too fancy and then have all your spice all over the place because then it's not going to do you any good on the floor. Right? Something falls on the floor. There is no such thing as the 5-second rule. Don't eat it. All right, let's try a little bit more. I think I made it to a point that I'm happy with that. So, again, cooking's a lot about like experimenting and not being afraid to really, make mistakes on some things. So what I'm actually going to do with this is I'm going to add a decent amount of olive oil, and I'm going to kind of whip it up into a marinade, throw some chicken in a bag with it, let it sit for, an hour or so before I throw it in the oven. We'll see what comes out. But as for me, this is it. So I'm out. I'll see you next time.